Everybody, thanks for taking some time on a Wednesday afternoon to talk to us about the program. So my name is Dr. Scott Lowe. I've been on faculty here at UNLV for 21 years, and I'm currently serving as the program coordinator for the PhD program and the EDS program. And I have one other member of the faculty here, and I'll let her introduce herself, Dr. Lee.
Hi, everyone. Yeah, my name's Catherine Lee, and I'm in my ninth year here at UNLV. I am, in addition to being the associate professor in residence, which basically means I do a lot of teaching and advising and supervising. Uh-oh, it went away, Scott, just so you know.
It's back.
It is, just kidding, it's back. I also am the field experience coordinator, and that will make a lot more sense once we get into this presentation about like what would be expected as part of your training to prepare you to become a licensed school psychologist. So welcome, happy to have you all here.
Yeah, really happy to have you guys here. And so what we're going to do today, we have a few slides that we want to go through with you all, just to give you kind of an overview about our programs here. So we'll talk a little bit about that. And then at the end, we're really interested in answering questions that you guys have. And we'll answer them as best we can. So questions about the program, we can definitely answer. And we can hopefully direct you to the right place for any questions you have about admissions or GA ships or any of that kind of good stuff. So with that, let me go ahead and see if this works, and it does. What I'm going to do here is we'll go through some aspects of the program, kind of give you an overview of what we're about. We'll talk about admissions and then have time at the end for questions. So orientation, school psychology, even if you're a psychology major, a lot of folks, myself included, as an undergraduate, didn't really know what school psychology was or what school psychologists do. And so, essentially, what we are, if you're not entirely familiar with what we do, is we are primary mental health providers who work in educational settings. And so a lot of our training is not only to get you ready for the practice of psychology, but to get you ready to practice psychology in educational settings, which are very specific and different. They function differently. There are different laws that sort of govern what we do. And we have a pretty broad role in that respect. So, a lot of what we do centers around kids who are struggling with learning difficulties or social emotional difficulties. And we really do try to take a holistic view of how we conceptualize those issues for kids. So one thing that you'll hear us talk a lot about is ecological or cultural ecological models or conceptualizations of kids. And that just speaks to the fact that we view the child development and teaching and learning and the difficulties that come as a result of that. There are factors within the child that contribute to that, but also factors outside of the child that contribute and maintain those kinds of issues. And so we try to train you all to be able to function within that framework to help kids is in a very holistic way. So through that, we end up consulting and partnering a lot with school administrators, parents, teachers, community stakeholders, and so on. And so again, we just try to take a holistic view of children and apply that in our practice. So why do you want to become a school psych? Which is a question I know that's on the tip of everybody's tongue right now, but basically it's a fantastic profession to get into. If you are one who follows US News and World Report rankings of various things, they talk about good professions to go into because the job market is solid, and school psychology always seems to be at the top of those lists and has been for a while. So what we like to tell folks is, you come to us, you get trained, you get credentialed, and you're never going to want for a job over the course of your career. So the job market has been very robust. So there's a shortage nationally of practitioners here in Nevada. and there's a shortage in most regions of the country. And so, what you learn here, you can take with you anywhere and apply it. Plus, it's just a lot of fun. You get to spend your day in schools, interacting with kids and teenagers, and feeling like you are providing assistance to them that pushes their existence in a positive direction, whatever, in whatever manner that may be. So it's a fantastic profession to go into. Our mission is to serve, obviously, as school-based practitioners. This is partially obscured on my screen, although I think you guys can all see it. Um, but our programs, we're really teaching, we're really training from a scientist practitioner perspective. And so we want to prepare you to go and deliver comprehensive school psychological services that are data-based. So, we will train you in applied practical skills that you need in order to practice, but also on skills for being consumers and in some cases producers of research, so that you're making decisions that are right up and current with the state of the art. We also have a very strong orientation for preparing child advocates in our program. And we do that through various ways. So we have some unique experiences along those lines that we'll talk about a little bit later. And of course, we want to prepare you for any kind of setting. So, okay. Dr. Krach has
Yep.
just arrived.
Yeah, I'll take over the next part.
Okay.
Yeah, so I mean, I think Dr. Lowe really summarized a lot of kind of like the purpose, right? The roles and functions and the
There we go.
value that we bring to the school setting. And understand as you look into other programs, hopefully you'll, look to see what else is out there, unless you know for sure you want to stay here. But programs have different frameworks from which they approach, working with children in schools and families, and also have different models of practice. So as Dr. Lowe said, we do strongly endorse the cultural ecological framework, saying, hey, we understand there's a child, right? But that there are many different ecological layers, like the family and the school, and then the community, and then this, your state and the state of the world, right? That all those things interact in a way that can affect the child, and that the solutions are not just within the child, right? That they involve a lot more. And then the scientist practitioner model for our program really makes you a smart consumer of research and science, understanding scholarship and how to read articles, and how to hear news, right, in a meaningful scientific way, and how do we apply it in real world practice. And as Dr. Lowe said, it's a lot about data, right, and evidence-based practices and interventions, and like, look, if we're going to make an informed decision, we need the data to back that up. So that's a big part of what we train you to do, is understand what data do you need, how to interpret the data, and then how do you make meaningful recommendations for that specific student. So very rewarding work. I think that's one of the best parts of the job, right? It's like, I used to practice and I go home like, today was a win, like I feel like I did good in the world. And sometimes there are jobs that, you don't feel that way. So that was always what I enjoyed about practicing. Now the win for me is like training, right? And training future school psychs, because there is such a shortage and such a need, especially with like mental health crises on the rise, with youth and adolescents too. So anyway, so some highlights of our program, besides those two already that I mentioned, is our training experiences. Like right in the first semester of your first year, we get you in the school. Like some of you work in the school, which is great, but some of you haven't, and that's okay. And so it's really to introduce you there in this intro practicum of your first year, first semester, get in the school, follow a school psychologist, shadow them, ask them all your questions, see all the things they do, right? And to really see, is this, am I loving this, right? Or is this really the right profession for me? And do I see myself growing? And again, feeling like I can do this, for a long time. And then those practical field-based experiences continue as you go throughout the program, and they develop and increase as you develop and increase in your skills. We have a legal advocacy clinic, which I think is pretty unique in our university, in our program, where you will take those cases that maybe didn't go so well, right? In the meetings where there was disagreement, and then maybe they saw a legal advocate or they went through due process, and to really see all the aspects of that case, right? And really understand the legal part, and learn how to advocate for the student in those cases. And then there's their full-time internship, which is when it's basically Monday through Friday, all the hours of the school day, where you are living and breathing school psych, like all the time, which really prepares you for when you're going to be your own licensed school psychologist in the end. So that's the EDS program. You would finish in 3 years if you're doing it full-time. We also have a PhD program, which is APA accredited, which will be on the next slide too. But it really, yeah, like we can go back. Sorry. So the PhD program, which is, thank you, APA accredited, allows you to do all those amazing things, get all those school-based experiences, and prepares you to be a really keen researcher. You have your own dissertation that you design under supervision of your advisor, and you have to collect data and interpret the data and present on your data and all that. And you get intensive clinical training experiences, so you can become a licensed psychologist, a health service provider, and be licensed by a state board, by the psychological board that oversees licensing. So you could be a dual school psychologist and licensed health service psychologist, which is pretty awesome. The EDS bonus, and again, if you even do PhD, it's the same. It prepares you to become a nationally certified school psychologist. So it is additional letters behind your name, which is pretty cool. It also allows you to transfer easily between 31 other states that take the NCSP easily, right? And you get more money. You normally get a 5% bonus, if you have the NCSP. So we require that for our students to take the exam, and you would have your NCSP upon graduating, which is great. So that's the EDS program and the PhD program. And lastly, our training model prepares you to serve the needs of an increasingly diverse population, which is, yes, here in Las Vegas, but it is nationwide, as we know. I think it's a very important need that we're addressing, and a lot of advocacy, understanding social justice, and working against inequities that exist nationally and systemically are a big part of our training model as well. I already highlighted that the PhD program has been accredited on contingency by the American Psychological Association. On contingency, Scott, basically means what we need to show some data, I think, like in a couple years. But basically the students apply through a match, which other accredited programs like clinical psych programs and school psych programs and counseling psych programs also apply through for their internship, and it's very competitive, and they go, and that's the training to be a licensed psychologist, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, the accreditation on contingency status is purely a function of the fact that we're a new doctoral program, and this was our initial accreditation. So they do that initially they do it for a 3-year term, and then we reapply for a longer accreditation.
Exactly. And our EDS program is accredited by the National Association of School Psychologists, which is our overarching national organization. So a lot of great things about our program. And then Dr. Krach, I think we'll talk about,
So I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to make it. So I'm glad I'm able to be here and get a chance to talk to you guys. I was teaching an internship class, and we just wrapped that class up a little early, and I was able to drop on in. I'm gonna go with the slides, but I also want to give just a little spiel about the field of school psychology. When somebody asks me for, if you're in an elevator and somebody has 2 seconds for you to talk to them about what a school psychologist is, I like to use the term that we're a bridge. School psychologists are the bridge between kids with regular issues and receiving regular services to kids with special issues to receive special services. And part of that is working with teachers when they start seeing and identifying that kids are having problems, trying to help them come up with solutions. First, identifying what the problem is using data, using consultation skills to try and help the teacher implement research-based interventions, and culturally and systems appropriate interventions, and then monitoring to make sure those interventions are working. And then when they're not working, maybe there's something bigger than can be handled in a regular ed classroom. We conduct the diagnostic assessments to try and identify if this child may need special education services. And then once that decision has been made, if a child is placed in special education, but they have significant other issues, we might help with doing counseling as a related service and that kind of thing. So this idea that we are not, we're just a bridge, right? We're the folks that help people find out what's wrong and get the services that they need to take care of them. I will also say that a doctorate in school psychology is much more valuable than a doctorate in clinical or counseling psych. And I say that, and I know it sounds like, of course she says that, but there are a couple of reasons why I say that it's more valuable. One is that we actually financially make more. The research shows that in the 4 areas of health service psychology, the ones that are license eligible, the folks who make the most are the business folks, industrial organizational psychology, then us. And then after us are clinical psychology and counseling psychology. And so if you were wondering, well, I guess I'll have to take a pay cut to do no, school psych, we make more than they do at the doctoral level. And we actually do have recertification issues where folks will become a clinical or counseling psych and then have to come back and receive training to work in the schools. And that's the second part about why school psych is a better area. If you want to work with kids, you can, if you're clinical or counseling psych, you can work in every setting where kids are, their homes, their families, hospitals, private practice, even prisons and things like that, but you can't work in the schools. But if you get your school psych doctorate, you can work everywhere that kids are, including the schools. And so we have doors open to us that are literally shut to other professions. So I like to emphasize those things because if you're trying to make a decision about what you want to do, and as a licensed person with a background in school psych, I mean, I've worked with the Department of Veterans Affairs. I've done forensic assessments for the court systems. I've worked in prisons with kids. We try 14-year-olds as adults in Alabama. And so I've worked in adult penitentiaries with kids. I've worked in schools. I've worked in private practice. I've worked in hospitals. I've worked a lot with forensic cases with foster care. I've been able to do anything, anywhere I wanted. There has been no limit based off of what I want to do. So I wanted to say that, and then I'll go back to the slides. Sorry, guys. I genuinely love everything about being a school psychologist, and I don't know why there's a shortage, because if everybody knew how great this is as a profession, we would have people just lined up around the block. So the EDS degree, like we were talking about, is a 3-year program where the first year is like 90% coursework, 10% practicum. The second year is like 50% coursework, 50% practicum. And the third year is 100% internship. So that is what that looks like. The school year does include, particularly between the first and second year, summer. So you would be expected to take classes that first summer. And we do, and this is true for pretty much every school, actually any of the doctoral and EDS programs, a lot of our courses are only offered once a year, and they are prerequisites for other courses that come up. And so if you're like, well, I'm just going to go rogue, and I know what they told me I should take my first semester, but I'm going to take what I want to, it probably means you're going to end up sitting out a year because you'll have missed the prerequisite for what you need in the spring, which is a prerequisite for what you need in the summer, which is a prerequisite for what you need in the fall. And so you pretty much have to take the classes in the order, particularly in those first 3 semesters that we recommend. And so this is a full-time program. Ideally, it's a full-time program. If you want to take it part-time, it is much harder to negotiate, because again, there's certain classes that if you miss them, you sit out. So that's what you can go to the next slide. I'm just talking off the top of my head at this point. The PhD program, however long it takes, is how long it takes. Usually straight out of a bachelor's degree. It's a 5-year program. This idea that you can get a doctorate in 4 years is fine for non-practitioner degree areas. You know, if you were getting your degree in ed psych or learning and cognition or even child development, 4 years is fine. It is not the case in any of the places where you're going to end up with a license. So in the field, in the PhD field of psychology, and this is true for any of them, you're going to have your coursework, you're going to have your dissertation, but you will have a year of pre-doctoral internship, which often requires for you to move because those internships are not always right where you are comfortable being, whatever you consider your home. And then you'll have to do, most states, there's 3 states, I think, but most states require a postdoctoral internship of a year. And then you have to take and pass this test called the EPPP, which is our licensure exam. It's the nationwide licensure exam. And if you do that, in the licensure exam, the EPPP has a failure rate higher than the bar exam. So we do have issues with that across the field. Our program, we do a great job of having students pass the EPPP, and we do a great job of having our students get great internship sites. And so those are things that really stand out for us. The question was, can you go from a master's degree to a doctoral degree? And absolutely. You can either be a master's student and apply in your first year for the doctoral program. You can apply in your second year as an EDS student. You can finish your EDS degree altogether and then apply for a doctoral degree. And that's actually how I did it. I got my EDS degree completely finished, and then it went straight into a doctoral degree. And my time starting from an EDS degree all the way through finishing my pre-doctoral internship and dissertation was 7 years. If you start as a bachelor student, it's probably going to be closer to 5 to 6, because not all of your coursework will immediately transfer. And that's not us. It's not UNLV trying to be mean. It's just the way it is at a lot of universities. And so you will be able to transfer some, but not all of your master's level credits. So the sooner that you make the choice to switch to the doctoral program, the sooner you're taking doctoral level classes that will work towards you getting finished. So I could have knocked a year off easily by not doing the year of internship for EDS, and finished in 6 years. And probably if I'd chosen to take a different approach, I could have done it in 5. But I am very glad I did it the way I did with my EDS degree first. I am somebody who didn't have a safety net, right? And so you have folks that can start a doctoral program, work for 5 years, and if they don't graduate or they don't go into their internship, if something happens in their life, then they don't finish. And if you don't finish, you might as well give an undergrad degree, really, because there is being ABD, all but dissertated, is not really a career path. Whereas I didn't have a safety net. So the idea of finishing an EDS degree and then starting a doctoral degree, that meant that after I was finished with my EDS degree, I absolutely had a career, even if I couldn't finish my doctorate due to whatever life, threw at me. And so I am glad I took those extra couple of years, because it gave me security in finishing up my doctorate. All right, so let's, you'll notice practicum is structured and systematic. The entire process is developmental. So we do have 2 different sets of admission dates. We have the admission date for the doctoral program, which I think is December 1st. So I know that that's in the fall. So you want to apply to the doctoral program. You don't want to put it off. The EDS degree, there is a little bit more time because that is due in the spring, early spring, February 1st. You're going to be asked to do personal statement. Treat that personal statement as a writing sample. You know, this is a great opportunity for us to be able to see if you can write well, interestingly, structured, you know, clearly. It also gives us a chance to learn who you are, but you know, you also want to make sure that you come across as a mentally healthy person. Sometimes we'll get applicants where I'm like, oh, they need to be packing their bags, their emotional baggage before they start helping others. So do remember that that is what this is. You want to make sure that you are prepared to submit all your transcripts and your CV and resume. The things we're looking for: have you worked with kids anytime? Have you provided any kind of psychological services? Maybe you've done volunteer work at a homeless shelter. Maybe you've done volunteer work with a suicide hotline. Maybe you have, you know, babysat somebody or done nannying or whatever. All those things, you you don't have to have been a school teacher for 3 or 5 years, although that looks nice. And you don't have to have a master's degree already in counseling. We want to see those experiences, though. We want to see that you have done and have a real understanding of what you're doing. Also, we want to know that you actually know what it means to be a school psychologist. So I highly recommend that you go into the NASP website, the National Association of School Psychologists website, and check it out. Because, you know, if your letter says, I want to devote my entire experience to providing counseling to kids that are adjusting to middle school, we're not the right field for you. And so we really want to know before we admit a student to our program that you know what we do and that that is really a true goal for you. All right, you can turn to the next slide if you don't mind. And so you'll notice that the GPA is higher for the doctoral program. You do have a diversity statement because that is hugely important to this program, is working with and providing services to diverse populations. So, you know, when we talk about diversity, you can talk about your own diversity. You can talk about the diversity of how diversity plays in with just your viewpoint in the world, what you think you might have to offer diverse populations of teachers and clients and cross-cultural services. All right. Next slide, please. And of course, you can go into our looking at online. I will also put the NASP website in our chat so that you know where to go to look at NASP. And I am really glad that I was able to pop in and get a chance to meet with y'all as well.